Good evening and welcome to the Fredi Schiff Levin Lecture Series, which is generously sponsored by the Levin family. Now in its 19th season, this lecture honors the artist Fredi Schiff Levin, her legacy as a member of the Provincetown arts community by inviting artists, curators, authors, and scholars to speak at PAM every year. We're grateful to the Levin family for their continued support of this program and being able to bring in great folks, not only to talk about the exhibitions that are up on the walls, but also books and projects and such. And we're really thankful, and Tony's here with us tonight, so thank you, Tony, for continuing this for us. We're very lucky tonight. We have a really dynamic duo here. This exhibition, Zehra Khan, Your Everyday Myths, has been hugely and wildly successful this summer. When Megan proposed the show, I don't know, like 900 years ago before the pandemic, it made a lot of sense. Zehra has been in Provincetown, you were here for 10 years, through the Fine Arts, the Mass College of Arts low residency program through the Fine Arts Work Center, which had an exhibition at the Provincetown Art Association Museum. How's that, right? Did I get them all?
You got it.
But I'm especially grateful to these two. They did everything. Like, it was one of those things where the show just appeared, and it was, you know, it was easy to pack, you know, if you know how to fold a sheet, right? Which I still don't know how to do.
Oh.
But anyway, I'm really grateful to both of you for putting this together. It's really been a wonderful experience to interact not only with the videos, but with the artwork. And I'm loving it. Every time I come in here, I see something different that I didn't see before, and I'm, again, excited for you all to hear their story. So with that, I'm going to introduce Megan Hinton, our curator, who is going to introduce our artist, Zehra Khan. And before we do that, I just want to let you know that our next lecture is September 1st at 6 o'clock, which is going to be Michelle Law, Midge Patel, Rebecca Bruin, and Amy Heller discussing their exhibition Out of the Blue, which is a cyanotype exhibition that will be actually up later this year. So thank you all, and with that, Megan, all you.
Thank you, Chris. I want to thank Leslie for putting these lecture series together. It's always good to have some conversation and delivery, putting the art in context. And I want to thank Chris McCarthy, because she had the foresight to know that this show should be in this big space to show Zehra's breadth. And also to give Zehra a show in high summer season. For that, we are very grateful for that kind of visibility. Like Chris said, I think the show was proposed over 6 years ago, so it's wonderful to see this realization. And I think it's a highlight of this Provincetown summer of 2022. I want to thank Seth Abramson, former registrar, and new registrar Madeline Larson for organization, and always Jim Zimmerman for his amazing installation and hanging skills. I'll speak very briefly about Zehra's work, which will be followed by her slide talk, and then we'll open to a Q&A. So just make a mental note, hold your questioning for the Q&A period. Thank you, and thank you for coming. Your Everyday Myths was a seamless curation for me, from initial communication to final hanging, as Zehra's vision was clear and decisive, much like her work. Zehra Khan's multidisciplinary work is under the influence of medieval illuminated manuscripts, the divided mark or divisionism of Impressionism and its keyed up color, graffiti, notably Keith Haring's unabashed use of the continuous line to create rhythm and flow, and the pattern and design art movement from the 1970s and 80s, where a group of predominantly women artists began to defy notions of male-dominated Western approaches to art making. P&D, pattern and design, as it's called, used patterning and sewing as a form of high art influenced by art from Asia and Africa. The term femage came from the P&D movement, where women's craft, sewing, and painting merge. In Zehra's work, like P&D, often a non-specific aspect of composition occurs with an edge-to-edge coverage, seen here in such works as Charm Quilt, Invisible, and the performance documentation on the monitor indoor light making. Zehra's work is rooted in painting, but she approaches it with the spirit of applied arts, where multiple media merge to create humorous, playful, and psychologically charged performance, sculpture, and flat work. We see further influence from her own Pakistani heritage with the contemporary appropriation of Islamic geometry and mark making that she describes as a holiness through patterning, as the referencing arabesque decor or patterns that might decorate a Persian carpet. Or in Zehra's case, motifs on a bedsheet or comforter, which project the surface's original object use value into a new function of poetic, painterly, and sculptural musings. Islamic art, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, virtually defies any comprehensive definition apropos to the inability to materially categorize Zehra Khan's oeuvre. Your Everyday Miss defies traditional notions of art making. Zehra's non-tentative openness through process and material leads to an experimentation, a lowbrow materiality of markers, hot glue, papier-mâché, and scraps of recycled notes with torn-up drawings brings forth contemporary hybrid constructions. She subverts the notion of using expensive, financially inaccessible art supplies to figure out how art can be made with trash, office supplies, or adhesives typically used to join two substrates now existing here on a pedestal in an opulent display. The bed sheets and comforters, whose surfaces are marked in meditative totality, can be conveniently folded and tucked away, an ingenious solution Khan uses to solve the burden of material storage for artists. The sheets are foldable and portable. She paints them one area at a time on her lap, typically sitting on the floor. The physicality is grounding herself in the work with a casual, playful nature to find her subject during a process-driven trip. Works in hot glue like Golden Culprit and Diatom make the gooey, stringy medium a glowing, translucent substrate for painting and sculpture. They hang in exhibition from the ceiling to reframe and look through on both sides, putting works in a broader layered context. They're at play with the flat field of two-dimensional art while simultaneously accentuating space and dimension. On closer inspection, papier-mâché animals perch on wires and sit on the floor in their real-time actual positions as if up in the sky or next to the bed. Pieces like Fancy Golden Cat Sitting or Seersucker Cat display an adorned anthropomorphic informalism to delight, challenge, and surprise us viewers. Congratulations, Zehra, on your show. We are so lucky to have it here in Provincetown and at PAM. I'd like to introduce you to Zehra Khan. Please give her a warm welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. And no, it's okay. I can point this right through you. I thought I'd introduce a little bit about who I am and where I came from, and I'd love to answer any questions you have at the end. great-great-grandmother made in Idaho. And I grew up with these on my bed, and I could tell the love and specificity, the time, commitment, that I don't know what she looks like, but I have her quilt. So there was something really special that was happening with owning something that's like a little piece of history. So at some point I decided I wanted to try to make my own version of quilt making, but without the patience that a real quilter or that a fabric quilter requires, and the specificity with lines. I am not into straight lines at all. They don't make me happy, so I'm not going to do them. So this was my version, which was instead of cutting out scraps of fabric, I'm cutting out scraps of paper from throughout my whole life. So diary entries, exhibition postcards, any little bit, maybe make it a little less serious, and I love cats. Let's keep going. Holding a lobster? You know, some people have said that. Yes, that is supposed to be one of those cartoonish magnets, but it is very crustacean-y as well. Yeah. Now this piece, which is called Ecstatic, I named it because it reminded me of a Bernini sculpture where it's Mother Mary's holding Jesus and there's all these crazy light rays coming out of it, and the sculptor has done the light rays in these huge rods. So I loved this idea of kind of explosion and light, and how do you show that? Which is where the installing arrows around it, I kind of just wanted to force that weird energy that's coming out of his hand into the space. And it's also a little bit of a nod to some more art historical heroes of mine. There's an Albrecht Dürer character back here from Adam and Eve. This is Adam. And at a certain point I drew him and I didn't like his proportions, and I thought, I'm not really into men either. I'm just going to take him right out right now. So he's kind of covered with this ecstasy of flowers, which was a collage. So I loved the idea of like, which is another Botticelli reference from the Venus character, is Botticelli's always doing these characters barfing out flowers in ecstasy, as if like it's, you know, and I loved that idea of we're so can we be floral in kind of like as an entity almost. And then down below is a little reference to Monet lily pad and a Van Gogh vase of flowers. And then, of course, a cat that is saying meow, meow, meow. And then backwards, it's meow, 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 wow. And part of the reason why I'm writing backwards is because I'm drawing on both sides of the sheet at the same time, which creates the ink seepage affects one side, affects both sides at the same time. So this piece is Fox Thoughts. It started out with a lot of actual writing. It's been mostly obscured now, but almost like these foxes were having these little bucolic floral thoughts about love. And I wanted to lean into the floral this bed sheet is crazy, like with this great border here, this floral border, and I left the sign on that says it's a full sheet that's $1. I did pay $1 for it. And I like keeping that little interruption inside the piece. Here's the piece that's behind us, the rat quilt, which I started in 2004. It was a very sparse drawing, and then it just got more and more developed throughout the years as I realized that there was more that could be done to it. I'd like to think that I wouldn't beat a piece to death, but I might. Yeah. If you don't take it away from me, I might. And this is, as Megan was saying, my anthropomorphic characters about love and emotions. These are all little relationships going on, swirling in the cosmos of Provincetown. There's the Pilgrim Monument in the corner, and just kind of a frenzy or an ecstasy of excesses. Donuts, cake, pie, booze, cigarettes, here's some books, I don't know. I like books too. But I wanted to kind of show chaos and almost like universal chaos in a specific context. This piece, at one point I called it unfitted because it's a fitted bed sheet that I ripped up the sides and then painted on both sides. And in much of the way that I like to reuse my work, I repurposed this piece for a performance where I wore the sheet and walked around the grounds and of this beautiful space and made an artist boat me around, which was very fun. But part of it, I mean, then it became, is it a hijab? Is it a reference to, my Pakistani culture? Do people in other areas of the world wear this? Should they be wearing it in Western upstate New York? I'm kind of playing with all those questions. And at a certain point, I started making the marks on people and myself, which was probably my first foray into 3 dimensions and was very confusing at the time. But I knew I wanted to make fun, or like poke fun at mark making in a different way. So that came through photography and film. And as another kind of performance that I really found encapsulated where I was in my life at the time, this performance was in February 2021. So it was right at the beginning of kind of like shut down Zoom culture as well. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to talk to our parents on Zoom. How do we do this? So this was my first Zoom performance where I painted myself, and I thought, in this pandemic, I just wanted to be in a nest of painting, like home. I wanted to feel like I was in bed at home. So I called it indoor light painting. It's almost like I'm trying to paint just my little domestic scene. And I found that, I also scored it to Enya, because I was trying to think of what was the most stereotypical relaxing music you could pick, while it also being kind of fun and recognizable. And I mean, it definitely kind of added a surreal whimsy to this moment. A little retro as well, because that song was a very popular song in the 90s.
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking into the zoom lens, trying to see my painting. So I found there were some interesting things about where I was looking and maybe who the audience was starting to become through this performance. This is a piece I created for another performance. Actually, there is a film that I've included in the show of rabbits or people dressed up as rabbits in the snow in Vermont. And at the time in Vermont, I was thinking of spring. So spring in Vermont, let's jump in the snow. Laundry day in Vermont, let's be naked in the snow. Like, I just wanted to crank up the absurdity of it. And so this was kind of a celebration of spring. And it was, as a bed sheet, I brought it along for the installation of this show and realized that it could become involved very quickly. In one fell swoop, it became a ghost. And all I had to do was cut some eye holes out of it. And it became part of a permanent piece of artwork that is in this gallery of Charles Webster Hawthorne, who is a amazing character in Provincetown history. And I kind of like that I got to sneak him into the show in this roundabout way, while it's like drawing attention to him, but also obscuring him. So, and I have heard some interesting comments about how it, again, looked like a burqa to some people. And for me, it was totally, I was thinking, ooh, spooky ghost, But there can't help but be, some visual similarities, for sure. And, right, so this is the Bunny Laundry Day piece, where I collaborated with a friend who did sew that quilt together. And then she created an effect, like a green screen, where you replace certain colors of the quilt with a projection. which was technology that she knew how to use and introduced to me. And so we thought, well, what is the image that should be playing across this spring laundry scene? And so we figured some floral decorated breasts would be like the bountiful spring. And speaking of breasts, this piece is called One Boob. And when I put this up, I realized it's signed, 2018, and then I'm like, oh crap, it's actually 2022, so I'm constantly reworking things, evolving them, and then realizing, oh, it looks like a boob. I gotta, now that it has the title to it, it becomes something else and becomes part of this show, which I was, oops, sorry. And there is a pigeon made out of trash found in my studio in Nepal. I love doing art residencies and traveling as much as possible, so I was in Nepal for a 1-month art residency recently, actually during the pandemic, which is crazy because I feel like I was actually there with no tourists, which is probably never gonna happen again. And I didn't realize what a visual difference, and I mean, again, like there's no pollution in the city because everybody was gone. I mean, it was an amazing time to be there for sure. And pigeons are kind of sacred there. They feed them outside the temples. So I loved this everyday creature that has a little bit of sacredness to it, which I feel kind of like most creatures do. Here's seersucker cat. My girlfriend at the time cut off her pants. She had seersucker pants, she made them into shorts, and so all the rest of the seersucker material went into the cat. And then paper mache. And I love anything that looks like fake gold. So I became really interested in if gold is so precious, fake gold, if it's beautiful, then where does the preciousness come in? Some decorated wine bottles and beer bottle. A lot of my aesthetic choices are made off of kind of jokes that I make to myself. So I like that this is a real beer bottle that's covered in paper, and then this one is an empty paper bottle with nothing inside. So I'm just kind of playing games on materials. That's an egg that was covered in hot glue dots and then painted blue, and I just loved that all of a sudden it was transformed into this bizarre texture quickly. This is a leaf, a bowl made out of rose leaves glued together. And there was something about this is a process shot. So I do these pieces on the back of a baking sheet so I can peel them off very easily. And then I flip it over and work on it on both sides, which creates, so there's not just one side that's completely flat and one side that's kind of more in relief. So I'm flipping it all the time, which is actually how I do the bed sheets pieces too. I'm interested in what happens with both surfaces. That is just a hot glue piece with no paint on it. But then I became interested in dangling painted parts. I mean, they feel, Well, this piece is called Diatom Quilt. Another interest in kind of atomic level breaking things down. Another one that I kind of think of as a constellation or an orbit. This is my fake bronze stage. I mean, it's almost got religious connotations of chalices. So definitely playing with a lot of religious symbols. Oh, and it's candy that's mixed in as the jewels. Another hot glue piece. Not in this show, but just figured I would show a little bit more of what I've been working on, mainly during this pandemic time. Hot glue piece with a card that I thought was very special.
Yeah.
Now, the golden culprit. And I just wanted to end it with this picture from a film that Amy Davies made for us at PAM. Interviewed us out in the woods, and because we were trying to avoid the construction noises here at PAM, she had this beautiful spot in the woods for us to do, and I said, well, could we sit right into in the moss, so we really get the color of the green in there. So I'm always looking for color. And I gotta say thank you so much to Pam for having me, and Provincetown is such a special place in my heart. I feel it's a homecoming, and I feel very grateful to be here, so thank you for having me.
Thank you. Very nice. Leslie had the ingenious idea of putting a dish for people to write down questions throughout the run of the exhibition, which I will ask you these questions, but if you have immediate questions or comments that you'd like to address to Zehra or the exhibition, please, by all means, they're welcome.
Please.
In making art, making drawings, I often think about how the first mark and the last mark are the most difficult. And I was going to ask you a question, and then you referenced it yourself about, what was it you said, I can overdo or I can kill. I wonder, how do you know when it's done? I mean, how is it ever done? Do you feel you can always work into it more? Because it looks like it's always in process, like things to be added to.
Yeah, I do find a point where it is done. Like I definitely could never go back into this Fox piece. This one, you might see me go back into this later. We'll see. Somebody better take it off my hands. Yes. Yeah. I'm just a big believer in no mistakes either. So if the first mark is a mistake, that's fine. It just means that maybe I need to cut a hole out in the middle of this piece, or fuse it, or collage it, or change it completely. It just means it's going to reorient things. Yeah.
Do you work on one piece at a time, or are you going over here and then there? How do you get through all of this? Is there somewhere huge and
Yeah.
then somewhere?
Yes. And I think a lot of artists go through the struggle is that it is very physically demanding. Even these tiny little marks. So I do work on multiple projects at the same time, usually in different parts of my apartment. So then when I feel like sitting down and relaxing, I have a big piece that I can put on my lap and just maybe listen to the radio or TV and kind of zone out into meditation. And then I try to have pieces that I really need my full brain for. Like there's no way I could watch TV for it to make more active choices. So yes, because a lot of these pieces involve sitting for so long, I have to break up my day with different projects. Yeah.
Stephen. Yeah.
I'm sorry I was late, so hopefully I asked the question you already said. So I love with the hot glue, and so to me they look a bit like screens, and And one question I have is, how big can they get? Have you experimented? Do they start to break? And that's one question. The second question is, since I think they look a bit like screens, like jolly screens or something, how do you feel when people kind of load cultural references on your work when you're not actually even working in that space?
I'm totally into it. Yes, I love people mixing up cultural references and putting them in, because the truth is I'm totally mixed up, and I've synthesized a lot into these works. Okay, now what was that first part of your question? Oh, yes. I have gotten them to be, you know, larger, but the truth is they do become compromised by weight. And it depends on how I'm showing them. I have become frustrated when I do larger pieces, because that rolling them structurally can damage them, and you know, so like the more precious they become, the harder it is. So there's definitely an engineering part that has to go into it, that structurally everything has to be balanced. And that was just a learning curve. But with hot glue, there's really no mistakes, because you can just cut that right out. Yeah. Please.
The piece behind you, is the border cotton, stiffly cotton?
Yes, the whole thing is cotton. It was a found blanket that somebody gave me from the churro swap shop. They picked it up for me, and I was going camping, and they gave it to me. I can show you that. The backside is a much more minimal drawing. You know, almost washy watercolor. And I did try to hang it to like keep some of the puffiness in, you know, because I liked that it had some texture. Thank you.
And that doesn't bleed through.
No, this one, yeah, it really didn't. Just because there's so much cotton batting in it. Yeah.
It's probably like a ghost in a cotton backing inside.
Yeah, the bleed of the material.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think also we're not seeing the backside, and there's a whole other pictorial thing going on the backside, and I think ultimately that's what these are flat. These are presented as flat works, but they're really sculptural, because you could interact and walk around them, and some of them are displayed that way, especially with the quilts hanging from the wires. And we didn't have a clear direction of how to feature the hot glue pieces until we were laying out the show, and that was just a kind of an aha moment that would show that three-dimensionality, that this thing that's simultaneously flat and dimensional, and that's also making a dimension and a layer to the rest of the exhibition. So I think it's the other side of things is something that's very interesting in the work.
Thank you. And I forgot to say that I am very interested in Turkish screens, which is, I saw an amazing Matisse show at the MFA in Boston, and it was the objects that were in the room that he painted, and it included a bunch of, well, maybe they were from Morocco, but they were screens that were made out of fabric with cut holes in them and geometric designs, you know, to give you a little shade, and I just loved that idea. And that's where the in the pussy quilts, I cut out all these shapes kind of under that influence of also realizing that because there were so many colors going on in it, that actually cutting out space might unify the piece better, because color was already not an option. The colors were too wild. So I love screens.
I had a friend years ago who made a book out of his sketchbook. And he drew with markers, so every page had a ghost on the other side. And he also photographed them. And the back of every page was the reverse of what was on the other side. It was brilliant. I mean, it's like you wonder, what do you do with this stuff doing, but was happening.
Yeah.
You know, and how do you record that, or how do you celebrate that? And it was really wonderful, just thinking about your other side comment.
Nice. I have done some drawings that were done both, on paper, that are both sides like that.
Sure.
This is more of a comment than a question, really.
Sure.
I love the sort of irreverence of you having this sheet and then going, yeah, if we cut 2 holes in it, we can put it over this guy in the corner. You know, it's like make this completely unexpected piece of art, not what you were planning when you walked in here. And I just think that's amazing that you'll just suddenly alter it in a very permanent way, because that's what's going to be best for this moment in time in this particular space and show.
Can I comment on that?
Please.
So when we were hanging the show, this was also not planned. And there was a sort of little quiet active performance where Zehra's giggling in the corner and putting the sheet over the bust of Charles Hawthorne, our founding father of Provincetown painting. And you know, I think, which is a lovely thing and well represented in this museum, but I think we're kind of more in the beginning of this 21st century in conversation about who's in the canon of art, who's represented. Is it just the white man? Who's been left out? And somehow by, she's not gonna say this, I don't think, but she's making an act that opens up a lot of thought about what's happening. But I will say that it's also a way of just covering that history for a second to maybe talk about what else is going on. And we were a little bit like, can we do this? And we were like, Chris, can we do this? And Chris was like, sure, absolutely. And, you know, I think that's one thing about, you know, you make work and then you put in an exhibition, and the context of the space affects the final outcome of the show. So that was one of Zehra's moves, and of course she was in there like cutting out an eye at the 11th hour and, you know, putting it all in. But that was a really nice bonus piece that we got, unexpected.
It's like he's a parakeet at night.
Right, yeah. Perchy, yeah, yeah. Lenny, yeah.
I just had a comment. I've been to the show a couple of times, and I've been watching Zehra's work grow over the years. But I always see something new, and that's my comment. I just realized that piece has a squirrel in it. And of course, I love squirrels.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just realized that the tail is sort of bending, and then I thought it was just part of the landscape until, my comment is there's always something to see, so keep looking.
Yeah,
anyway.
it's constantly emerging. Yeah, it's true.
I did love Where's Waldo pieces when I was a kid.
I was curious about, I don't know if you would use these words, but I get this sense in your work that there's this really like exuberant persistence through a lot of material, what could be a material challenge, which could stop another type of artist. Like what you said about there being no mistakes.
Right.
And I'm curious about where that like exuberant or like joyful persistence or versatility comes from with not, you don't have to get like really psychological, but was there a time in your life as a younger artist where you hadn't built that in yet? Or where you hadn't discovered that yet? What did it take to build that kind of persistence and versatility through material challenge?
Well, I appreciate that, and I do love a challenge, and that does motivate me a lot in my work. Is if I find like a treasure trove of trash, I get real excited, and I think, how can I transform this? I just lost what you were.
Oh, just like how do you build that muscle, that persistence?
Gotcha. I think what really has helped is travel and being exposed to so many types of art making and craft making throughout the world. And I do feel like I've been given a special position to be able to sneak in and out of different cultures because of how I was raised. And when I travel, I was taught at a certain point that I should never limit myself in making art by where I am, because there's always some sort of output you can make, whether it's drawing in the sand and taking a picture of it, or you know, trying to transform a small apartment. Because I work in limited resources, I want to take advantage of the scenarios and the places and the people that want to work with me, too.
I'm going to ask you a few of these
Sure.
show exhibition goer questions. Let's see. Provincetown, Venus. Could you please explain the significance of the hands in upper left corner and the spelling out a word?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think because they're probably assuming that that is sign language and that I am spelling something out. The truth is I was taking them from Roman symbols, and I can't remember what they mean anymore, which is fine for me, because it was the spirit of the thing that was important.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have? Was the pussy quilt deliberately hung so the green neon of the exit sign would show through the holes, becoming part of the piece?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I mean, Megan and I were trying to figure out how to hang these pieces without blocking the line of sight of some of the bigger works. I mean, at one point I thought maybe I could have a laundry line going across the entire gallery, but I was afraid that maybe that was going to interfere too much with the space. So when we hung the pussy quilt in the corner, it was, it's a bonus that it hides that exit sign and it becomes part of the art. And it's a lovely color green, so yeah.
Something visually, just that piece worked over there. We kind of had it around and something about the light filtration and the openings through the surface. Yeah, so we did consider the exit sign. The Provincetown rat blanket, was this inspired by a particular rat or just rats in general, ? Inquiring minds want to know.
I don't know what
There's a little drawing of a rat with some sort of illegible text near it.
Yeah.
So that's the question.
Yeah, these are specific rats, and I think actually that's why I was interested, like why this piece has continued throughout the years is because they were specific people, and maybe that awkwardness in the relationship carries through in the drawing and makes it a little bit more interesting. So yeah, to me, they were all relationships from my past. Yeah. I'm sorry?
Interesting life.
Yeah. Well, love is really weird.
I think this is a real Provincetown piece somehow. It seems like Commercial Street at 11 p.m. The question is, how do you make the stencil? Maeve Taylor, age 6.
Oh, stencil.
How do you make the stencil?
I don't know which stencil. I mean, maybe they're talking about the shape, the repetitive shapes. I cut one out and then used it as a template and just slapped it onto repeating it. And I didn't care if they were completely accurate or completely the right size. A little bit of wobble room is good for the eye, in my mind.
A couple more.
You sure?
Yep. what was the inspiration behind Bunny Laundry Day, La Pen Laundrette? How cold was the bunny? And this is, I think, a really good question. Why a bunny as a launderer?
Okay.
I'm adding the launderer. Why a bunny? Yeah.
Well, for many years I was costuming people as rats, and that was my animal of choice, because there is such a reaction for humans, either seeing one rat or seeing multiple rats, and also like the psychological effect of that, and that we empathize with them a little bit because they're mammals and they're so intelligent. So rats was my animal. And then as I was kind of expanding, I mean, the Bunny Laundry Day was really a celebration of spring in Vermont. So it was spring in Vermont, and it was covered in snow. And so I thought I have to go right out in there. And I did a couple projects with these bunny characters, and it was very much about the excesses of spring and the rites. The other project was called The Rites of Spring. So it was really like ritualistic and flowers and offerings, and bunnies are a pretty good symbol of that kind of fertility, and it's also an animal that we're all very familiar with.
The last question is, how do you make art with glue? But I think you've kind of already talked about it, unless you want to expand on the hot glue.
Well, I definitely leaned into making art with just glue because I liked a one-word medium. Like, I liked the description being glue.
Yeah.
And then being like, what? So I did do that for a lot of pieces. I mean, I made pieces out of salt and rose leaves, trash, leaves from different parts of the world. It's because I'm finding the meaning in it.
I think I said it a little bit in the opening thing I read, and I think what's so fascinating is that the hot glue is used as a tool, as an adhesive that we don't normally see. You know, it's covered by two objects coming together to adhere. And here, the tool or the vehicle is being used as a medium. So, and in a way that I'm kind of mesmerized by, you know, how it all comes together. So I think that's something that's really important about the hot glue that Zehra's pretty open to with material exploration. So, I have a question that I've been wanting to ask you for a while, which is why the title, Your Everyday Myth?
Well, I couldn't do trash art.
Should know the answer.
And I couldn't do in bed, which was, at one point. Your Everyday Myths, I think it's because I was trying to figure out what tied all these together, and I felt like there were mythic stories about love and excess and pleasure. So I chose materials that I felt were like elemental or important to me. So, and I didn't want it to just be my myths. That's why I put the word your in there, because I wanted people to think, well, what's your idea of a myth, or what's your story? What's my story? I don't know. Maybe they're all kind of a mixture of everybody's stories.
Good.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.